And as KXEL Live and Local continues, well, here we are, first week of March. That means a brand new issue of Iowa History Journal. It is the March-April edition, second issue of this volume number 18, and we've made connection via Zoom with the publisher and editor of Iowa History Journal, Michael Swanger. Mr. Swanger, thanks so much for the time, sir.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Always a pleasure. Good to talk to you again.
Likewise, iowahistoryjournal.com is where you go for all manner of information, including how you can subscribe, including a list of retail locations, etc. And when you go forth to the retail location, you're going to see a wonderful cover photo of an Iowa icon. And I dare say half the audience is going to know of him from one thing, and half the audience is going to know of him from something entirely different. And I don't know if you've come upon this, but sometimes the folks who know him as a cartoonist had no idea about his life as a conservationist, and vice versa.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Jeff. That's exactly correct. And with that said, I think that well, we should pull an array of readers to this two-part series that Don Doxey has penned for us. And the first part is our cover story for our March-April issue about the iconic Ding Darling. You know, I don't like to speak in terms of absolutes and bests and things like that, but Don makes an excellent case, and he even writes, he hints at this in his story that, you know, Darling might be the most diverse and interesting man in Iowa of the 20th century. I mean, to think of how he could hold two seemingly complete opposite interests in life. You know, most people would choose one path and not even know about the other path. And the fact that he decided to go down both paths and was so successful in them both as a cartoonist and as a conservationist is really just a testament to his amazing legacy. You know, he was born in Michigan. He spent half his childhood in Iowa. When he was 10, in 1876, he moved to Sioux City. He started drawing then. He was sketching things, noticing things in the wildlife. His puritanical father wasn't exactly a big fan of that. He thought it was kind of a waste of time, but it was obviously foreshadowing what was going to be his claim to fame as a cartoonist. And I think most people know of his work for the Des Moines Register. You know, he drew more than 15,000 editorial cartoons during his career that were syndicated by the New York Herald Tribune. So he won two Pulitzer Prizes. I mean, there's so many jumping off points just about his cartoon work alone. And that's what the first part of our series, Jeff, is about his cartoon work. Because there's no way you could put your arms around both those entities in one story. I mean, even then, it's difficult to squeeze it all into a two-part series. So, first part is about the cartoon work. The second part in our next issue, the May-June issue, will be about his conservation work.
J. Norwood Darling, and he signed the artwork J.N. for J. Norwood, and he shortened his last name of Darling to D''ing, which you could read as Ding, and that became the nickname. So even though he still signed it J.N. Ding, people just knew him as Ding Darling. And he came by the artwork accidentally. He started out as what I'll call a straight journalist, did he not?
That's right. You know, he got the nickname in college. You know, that was from his friends there in school. Right after he graduated from college in 1900 in Wisconsin, he took his first newspaper job for the Sioux City Tribune. And you're right, he started off as just a cub reporter. And what happened was one day he went to cover someone and he couldn't get a picture of them. Of course, he had this talent that was kind of hidden to everyone else that he was a very accomplished sketch artist. And so he couldn't get the photo to accompany his story. And he decided to draw the person instead. I think it was a story about an attorney. Anyway, the paper ran with the print and it was such a hit that they asked him to start drawing a series of local personalities. And the rest, as they say, is history. But during his 6 years at the Journal, He resisted the temptation to consider offers from much larger newspapers, so he worked there for a while, and I think he would have stayed there longer had he not been fired from his job. What happened was is that I believe there was a local councilman who didn't approve of one of the drawings that he made of the oh excuse me, it was a local school board president who objected to one of his drawings, and they fired him. And the Des Moines Register, of course, saw the opportunity immediately. They recognized what a talent he was, and they picked him up. And then he would go on to draw for them for many years through the 1940s.
And when you think back to this era, and it's really the 1900s of newspapers, many newspapers had a feature editorial cartoon, not on the editorial page, the opinion page. It was right on the front page. And the Des Moines Register and Leader, as it was known in the early part of the century, really carried that tradition on far longer than others. Obviously, Ding Darling, his successor for a period of time, but then for 30 years, it was Frank Miller. Now we're in our wheelhouse, right? Remember Frank Miller cartoons, and then some 40-some years ago, Brian Duffy took over, and they each had very distinct styles, but it was something that you can get away with more in a cartoon than the written word, and this is how you make your living, but I dare say you have to be careful sometimes with the words because they have bite, and sometimes the cartoon bites harder, but it seems more gentle, if you will, satirical.
I agree. I think it's more approachable in many ways because it's left to the reader's interpretation. There is no confusion in that regard. As you say, we talk about choosing our words carefully, and artists can get away with things. And I think that's the beauty of that. And you're right. His work was front page content. I mean, it was something that readers, they bought the paper every day or they subscribed because they wanted to see what his commentary was. One of the most famous cartoons he had was called The Long, Long Trail, which was a hastily drawn image of Theodore Roosevelt when the president died in 1919. And Darling was a longtime admirer of Roosevelt's conservation ethic, which should have been a clue then as to what he might be doing down the road. And another one of his favorite subjects was Hoover, President Hoover. He identified with him because of the Iowa connection, certainly first and foremost. And one of the cartoons that he drew in 1923 for the Register, it included four panels. It was entitled "In Good Old USA," and it earned Darling his first Pulitzer Prize the following year. But it illustrated men who rose from humble beginnings to achieve greatness by, not hanging around the corner drugstore. You'll have to just pick up the magazine to see the cartoon to get the idea. But the subjects were not named in the cartoon, but readers would definitely be able to know who they are or who they were because they were Herbert Hoover, Dr. Frederick Peterson, and Warren G. Harding. And Hoover would go on to become the subject matter of many of his cartoons over the years. They had a wonderful relationship. And so, yeah, he could definitely speak to the topics of the day. He illustrated Hoover when, he was running for president after he was elected. And of course, those 4 years in the White House, there was probably no better friend in the press than Ding Darling to Herbert Hoover.
This is the cover story of the brand new issue of Iowa History Journal, March-April issue, Ding Darling, part 1 of 2 in a series about the legendary cartoonist, conservationist, the cartoonist part of his life, chronicled by Don Doxey in this issue. Conservation part of his life comes up in the next issue. And I alluded earlier, Michael Swanger, to the fact that people may only know of one or the other. And a number of years ago, 20-some years ago, we took a vacation to Florida and drove on Sanibel Island by the Ding Darling Preserve. And I thought to myself, what in the blazes? Because again, I was tunnel vision in terms of what I knew him for. And the people down there know him as the creator of the duck stamp program, et cetera, not to give away the next article. And so again, it's just this melding of different interests. Either one would get you noticed. Very rare for somebody to have both of these connections. And part 1, as noted in this edition. So, as we look at some of the other stories, what I love about Iowa History Journal, and I say it every time, but the wide variety of topics. So, obviously, you've got the story about Ding Darling, but you also, since we've referenced Mr. Hoover, you've got the second part of a series that was begun the prior issue. And this has to do with two presidents, one of whom we've already mentioned in the conversation.
Well, obviously Herbert Hoover and then Abraham Lincoln. And I know we spoke at great length last time about the first part of that series written by Timothy Waltz. And this is kind of the key issue because if you read the last issue, you need this one to read the second part. And now you're going to get introduced to Darling. So we're kind of locking you in here to three issues for certain.
This
But yeah,
this is not your first day, is it? I
no,
mean,
no,
you
no, no. It did work out well in terms of, I had not thought about that though when I planned it out in terms of the connection with Darling and Hoover. So it did
sure.
work out well. But yeah, Timothy Walsh from Iowa City, and he's a mutual friend. Timothy has penned the second part of his Lincoln and Hoover series, which is about the great emancipator's influence on the great humanitarian. And it's really almost an essay. And the second part of Tim's series picks up in 31. We're right here at the precipice of the Depression, or excuse me, we're at the beginning of it, and he takes off during the last year of Hoover's term in the White House. There's a quote. There's many quotes that Hoover has about Lincoln, and they're referenced throughout this series. He had great admiration for Lincoln. He never missed Lincoln's birthday. He would speak in public, whether it was to groups or he would have a radio address. He never forgot it, and he would often reference Lincoln in some of his speeches. There are so many things. I don't even know where to begin to which ones to share the things he said about. I'll share this one with you real quickly. Hoover said this once of Lincoln. He said, Abraham Lincoln, more than any other man, gave expression to the heart and the character and the faith of our race. Washington was indeed the father of our country. Lincoln was its greatest son. I think that speaks well of his admiration for the 16th president.
And they both dealt with challenges, trials, unheard of at that point. Both were Republicans. Lincoln, the first Republican to be elected president, but Lincoln had the Civil War. Hoover had the Great Depression. I mean, there were all manner of things that would lead each to draw upon predecessors in terms of how to handle things. And again, history being what it is sometimes is kinder with some decades of retrospective and reflection. And I dare say that's the case with our native son, Hoover.
I think so too, Jeff. And there's one particular poignant moment in 31. In June that year, Hoover traveled to Springfield, Illinois to address a joint session of the Illinois State Legislature. But he was there mainly to rededicate the tomb, Lincoln's tomb. And on that day, there's a long speech you can look up. It's online, and a good chunk of it is in our story. But at the tomb that day, Hoover was really eloquent. He said, time sifts out the essentials of men's character and deeds, and in Lincoln's character, there stands out his patience, his indomitable will, his sense of humanity, of a breath which comes to but few men. And indeed, Hoover frequently reminded the American people of Lincoln's patience and his willpower. And these were two qualities that Hoover saw in himself and that he believed were being ignored by an increasingly impatient nation, which obviously was dealing with the Depression at the time.
Imagine now, 100 years later, how impatient we are as a society broadly. That's part two of the Lincoln and Hoover story. Tim Walsh, the author, and it's in the current issue of Iowa History Journal. You can get it by subscribing, iowahistoryjournal.com. But when you need the second and third copies for friends, where are some of the larger chains where we can find it statewide?
Every Barnes and Noble in Iowa, Jeff, as well as most Hy-Vee stores. We're now also in Walgreens stores. We have a list of retail outlets in every city on our website at iowahistoryjournal.com, and encourage folks to pick us up on the newsstand.
6 times a year, and this is the March-April issue. Folks who read the magazine for a very long time, have enjoyed the columns of our mutual friend Arvid Hughesman, and now you put him to double duty work. And I love this story because there's a centennial hook. That's a good thing. But and I grew up along the Lincoln Highway in Tama County, and then living in Marshalltown, and so I get it. Highway 30, the Lincoln Highway. It's got a famous name. There's been a lot of attention paid to it, but don't sleep on Highway 20.
Literally. Yeah, you're right. It's celebrating its centennial from its origins as a dragged highway uh, to the four-lane expressway that it is today. It is. This is what surprised me when Arvid submitted his story to me, and we talked about this for a while. We knew that it was coming up, but I didn't realize it was the longest highway in the U.S. I mean, I knew that it spanned the continent through 12 states from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans. And then, but a portion of the highways, 3,300 some miles, cross through Iowa from Dubuque to Sioux City. But I didn't know it was the longest U.S. highway. So there's quite a history there. And it dates back to more than 100 years. It really starts in 1910 when it was just a gravel and dirt road. And it got its name as the dragged highway because that's how they used to smooth those out. They would just chain a log and pull it behind a tractor and to help smooth it out. So yeah, here we are 100 years later after it was officially open. And over the years, it went through a number of names and some directions and some routes got changed. But in essence, it enters Iowa on the east side of the state over the Julian Dubuque Bridge that crosses the Mississippi River, and then on the western part of the state, it travels the Sergeant Floyd Memorial Bridge in Sioux City, and in between, there are just I think around 30 Iowa towns that you travel through. So yeah, you think about the Lincoln Highway or Route 66, oh sure, they get all the attention. What's wrong with US Highway 20? There's plenty of things to do and see. There really is. It's an amazing stretch of road.
And again, back in the old days, highways like this were named as opposed to numbered. And so that's how you got the Lincoln Highway, or north south, the Jefferson Highway, which sort of resembles the Avenue of the Saints just in terms of the concept of it. But then we got to the numeric system, and you could follow Highway 20 across the country. I think there are some people who are surprised when they look and they say, well, wait a minute, you can get on Interstate 80 in California and it goes all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, or Highway 30 or Highway 20. That was the whole point of it, wasn't it? That you had these various contiguous, consistent roadways to get you from coast to coast.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I think, even though this had started 100 years ago, I think we saw a lot of that obviously modernized post World War II. And there was a logistical reason for that, not only from the military standpoint, but then it turned out to be a huge economic boom for the nation and of course our state, because like I said, it crosses through around 30 towns, and it's not just the fact, I mean, you can get on, you can follow the historical markers, and that's fun too. But there are so many other sites along the way. There's mills, there's the mill in Independence. If you want to get out this summer, this is a good travel guide. If you want to, uh, put the family into the family truckster like Clark Griswold and vacation and visit the world's largest popcorn ball in Sac City, you can do that. There's a lot of fun to it too. So I would encourage folks to get out and explore it. There are parts of the highway that are no longer there, but there are also some structures that are there that are nearby some of the old bridges. So it's a very scenic drive through the state, through the northern part of the state, I should say.
And we guarantee that you will have a happier experience than Clark W. Griswold did whenever he would load them up in the family truckster. That was fraught with problems. This is not. But
No.
as is the case with the Lincoln Highway, there are stretches where it's not Highway 20 anymore because Highway 20 has moved over the course of time. But that's how we label a, quote, historic route. So if you want to be intellectually pure, shall we say, about the whole thing, you can pretty well do it, can you not?
Yeah, and this story is a good guide to that because we also reference the portions of the road that are no longer quote unquote US Highway 20. as well as some of the existing structures that still might be around. There's not as many. Some of them have been raised over years, like the old combination bridge that connected Iowa and Nebraska at Sioux City. That's no longer there, but that one was replaced in '81 by the new Siouxland Veterans Memorial Bridge, which in and of itself is another great visiting site,
Mhm.
or a tourist attraction, I should say. So yeah, all that is included in Arvid's story. He really does a good job of detailing it. I hear this all the time over the years, Jeff, that people use the magazine like a travel guide
Mhm.
for history. And it's stories like this that's why when I took the magazine over years ago, that was one of the features I wanted to implement, which is called, and that's why I've titled it IHJ Exploring History, because we want people to get out and see history for themselves. It's a tactile experience. We wanted them to see it, to feel it, to touch it. And so this is another example of one of those kinds of stories that I hope people just put the magazine in the car, read it ahead of time so you know where you're going, of course, but then hit the road and enjoy some Iowa history.
Iowa History Journal, the March April issue, just out. Get it wherever you get your magazines these days. If you need a list, go to iowahistoryjournal.com. While you're there, subscribe so that you get the issue in your mailbox. And then when you go to the newsstand, you're getting the second, third, and 10th issue for friends. We've been talking about travel along the Highway 20. Well, how about travel in a different respect? Boldly going where no man has gone before. And I love this because at its base, it has to do with economic development in small town Iowa. We spend a lot of time on this program talking about how you revitalize small towns. This is a great example. You can't copy this one, but the concept is there. Tell us about Jerry Harrington's excellent piece.
Yeah, his story about Riverside's annual Trek Fest is completely unique to Iowa, or as you say, anywhere else in the world. It's the only place where this happens. It's a gathering place for Trekkies and I guess Trekkers now. There are all kinds of terms to describe fans of the franchise, which is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year. So the first TV show first aired 60 years ago. So it was a perfect time for us to write about it. I asked Jerry about a year ago. I said, I know you're a comic book fan and this and that. Are you a Star Trek fan? And he kind of responded emphatically, yes. And he was well aware of the festival and had attended it. So every year they hold this event in Riverside, and this year it will be held June, let's see, 25th through the 27th. But it's Trek fans flock from around the globe to Riverside, and there will be every year there's always celebrity guests, folks who are on one of the shows, whether it was the original television show or some of the movies. But it's a fun part of Iowa's history. But you're right, Riverside has done a great job of making it their own, and it's a good economic engine for them. And for those who don't know, Captain James T. Kirk was to be born in Riverside on March 22nd, 2238, raised there by his parents George and Winona Kirk. Now, the Star Trek franchise claims Kirk's birthday to be March 22nd, 2233. But the folks who run Trekfest say otherwise, and there is a rock there with a monument that declares the birthday they proclaim. So who's going to change that? But
Well, we'll have
that's a
to find
tremendous
out. We'll
one.
just have to wait and find out in
You have to wait and find
2233 or
out.
2238.
That's right. It's a fun event, and Jerry did a good job of telling our readers about it. We have lots of photos of some of the previous folks who have appeared on the Star Trek franchise who have visited over the years. Now, Kirk himself, William Shatner, the actor who portrayed Kirk, has not been an official guest of the Trek Fest, but apparently he has been there in the past and visited. But there's a park. This is so fun. There's a statue of Kirk at Hall Park, which celebrates the future birthplace. There's also the Voyage Home Riverside History Center. Every year they have a Trek Fest parade, and then of course they have celebrities there. There are a lot of things you can look at, and if you're a Star Trek fan, this is the place to be.
And I mentioned the economic development. Basically, reference was made in one of the movies to James T. Kirk being born in Iowa. And the folks in Riverside, and all the details are in the article, of course, basically said, well, where in Iowa? They don't say. Maybe it could be Riverside. Maybe we should lay claim to being the future birthplace. Who's going to prove us wrong? And ultimately, after lawyers got involved, which I fully understand, the idea was, well, first one to claim it gets it. And so that's how Riverside got to have this unique distinction and this annual festival. And again, it's just great fun. But you could not have gone to an economic development seminar and had this pitched as an idea in the mid-1980s when it all happened. But you could take that, as we'll be at the Iowa World Summit again in about a month in Dubuque, and this is the example to say, well, what do you have as your town? What could you lay claim to? What is unique about what you do? They're not all going to be Trek Fests, but the parallel could well be there. And again, this has gone on more than 40 years.
It has. And, I'm glad you alluded to that because it really started very innocently as an impromptu idea at a city council meeting. Hey, we need an event. We need something to draw people to town and spend some money. That's exactly how it started. And then, as you mentioned, the lawyers found out about later, but the gentleman who wrote the book that was the impetus for Star Trek thought it was a great idea and told them to back off, and the rest is history.
IowaHistoryJournal.com is where you can go to get all manner of good information about the magazine, including that list of retail locations, including a way for you to subscribe. And we need to close by referencing the Publisher's Perspective column. A good shout out to our colleague Tim Harwood for his most recent literary effort.
Well, I know that you have spoken to Tim on air about his book, your colleague, and I'm so fortunate to have both of you to contribute to IHJ on a consistent basis. We both joked about this or laughed between the two of us when we found out in December that he had written a book as stealthily as he did. I don't know how he finds the time to write when he's hosting a show and working as VP of communications for the Blackhawks. Is like you. I don't know how. Do you either one of you sleep? I don't know, but so it's
not
pretty
enough,
incredible.
not enough. I'll
No,
tell
not
you.
enough.
But
No.
anyway,
So yeah, I feel very lazy by comparison to the both of you. So, but his new book is out. He's written a few, and of course we reference all the books he's written about in the past. We encourage folks to go pick them up online and through Iowa Almanac or through Totally Iowa, excuse me. And yeah, his new book is called Seniors to Juniors. It's a collection of Waterloo hockey stories. And I tuned in that day when you interviewed him because he hadn't told me he had written another book. So that's how I find out about things. I tune into you and listen to the radio, and so it was great because it sounds to me, based on the conversation he had with you, that there were a lot of tidbits, things that were certainly worthy of print that had made it into his previous tomes, and this is just a great way to encompass all of those things before they got lost to his memory and lost to history. And it's a wonderful read if you're a fan of the Blackhawks or just hockey in general.
Seniors to Juniors, a collection of Waterloo hockey stories, the most recent book written by KXEL's Tim Harwood, and you get that at waterlooblackhawks.com. The other books that he's written on hockey, about Waterloo hockey and the Blackhawks, two separate topics actually, but a trio of books at totallyiowa.com. And again, it's the topic of the Publisher's Perspective in this current issue of Iowa History Journal, second issue for Volume 18, March-April issue, with the noted cartoonist and conservationist Ding Darling on the cover. And I'll have to tell you, I did not notice this initially, but it was pointed out to me. The cover photo is wonderful because it is Darling sketching out wildlife with a cigarette in his hand. I thought that was, if you want to talk about, and forget the evils of smoking, it's very important, but if you want to talk about the era, he's wearing a three-piece suit. The tie is fully knotted. He's sketching wildlife, and all the time it looks like an unfiltered camel is there in his left hand. I mean, that's a newsroom.
It is. The only thing he's missing is a fedora, apparently, to complete the cliche outfit.
That's
So
it.
it's yeah, that isn't a classic piece of history. It's great because the dart is not obvious, but it's in the photo, and anyone who has a keen eye is going to notice it, and they're going to know this is how journalism was. Well, it's how the country was too at that
Yeah.
point. Listen, one of the first newspaper jobs I had, and that wasn't that long ago in terms of history. There were still guys smoking in the newsroom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it just goes with the territory, certainly back then. I'm glad you noticed that, though. Yeah.
It was pointed out to me, and well, I think the phrase was "take a look at that photo." And once you're told "take a look at the photo," I said, "Oh, that's unfiltered." Even he was serious about this. IowaHistoryJournal.com is where you go for all the good information about the brand new issue with Ding Darling on the cover. Michael Swanger, another great effort. As per custom, we'll do this again in 2 months, if not before.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Swanger is the owner and publisher of Iowa History Journal, family-run business based in the Des Moines metro area, IowaHistoryJournal.com, and he joined us via Zoom on News Talk 1540 KXEL, where Iowa comes to talk.